We're at week 3 in Crucible, and today I want to expand on my meta reports a little bit by talking about the secret item sets hidden in PoE, synergistic uniques, and specifically some of the ones that people are using in Crucible to get insane defenses, massive damage, and much, much more. Because sometimes an item isn't very powerful on your own. The effect needs to be magnified by a different unique, and the end result, well, you could say the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. These synergies are often at the core of some of PoE's most powerful and iconic builds. I'm sure at least one thing came to mind there, and while technically these aren't limited purely to uniques, you can also have rares that synergize together, think aura stackers, or maybe even ward loop. Today, I'm going to be diving into uniques because that's a little bit of a more approachable topic. And so let's look at 5 unique synergies in Path of Exile along with the builds enabled by them. The first of which is going to be the combo that I'm using on my Poison Spark build, Bloodnotch and Immutable Force. If you want to know more about my Poison Spark, the footage that you're seeing right now, do be sure to get subscribed so you don't miss my build guide when I upload it. But why am I using Bloodnotch and Immutable Force? Well, Bloodnotch is a jewel that's new to Crucible, which causes you to recover damage taken from stunning hits. Immutable Force greatly increases your stun recovery, so you barely even notice the stuns that you take. So here I have the Bloodnotch for 51% of damage taken from stunning hits is recovered as life, then the Immutable Force for 808% increased stun recovery. I'm then adding a Progenesis Flask, mitigating 25% of damage from hits during the effect. Since I'm a Pathfinder, the effect is always, and further layering on the Petrified Blood Aura. Now do keep in mind that this is just a quick TLDR of my defensive setup. There's quite a bit more to it that I will be going into more detail on. However, I've also covered the Bloodnotch Immutable Force setup in a recent video that I'll link up in the card and down in the description. The end result is a build that can take hits like a champion, or maybe in this case, slightly better than a champion. Now next up, we've got a combo that isn't so much about defenses as it is damage. And that is Kaom's Spirit combined with Voll's Vision. If you've played a squishy bow build this league, or maybe you wanted your bow build to be a little less squishy along with faster and doing more damage, then you've probably used this at one point or another. To use Kaom's Spirit, you need a consistent source of life regeneration that gets converted over to rage regen. The more life regen you have, the more rage per second you get, which enables fun things like running really fast, attacking faster, and using Berserk, which is a cooldown that causes you to take less damage and have absolutely massive DPS. Because Berserk drains your rage, the more rage you generate per second, the longer the Berserk will be up. And so, we're seeing a lot of builds turn to Voll's Vision. The overall stats of the item aren't actually terrible, at least as long as you're not using anything corrupted. You get 400 life regen, which is 4 rage a second, and it slots really nicely into your build. Of course, this isn't the only way to do it. You can always use some rares instead, but Voll's Vision is one of the most popular ways to get the rage that you need to maintain your rage with Kaom's Spirit. With the other common one being Immortal Flesh, a belt that gives up to 420 life per second, while having some interesting penalties and also other interesting upsides. If you're ailment immune, you get free armor and a little bit of reduction from hits, but it's at the cost of max res. So whether you want to use this or not comes down to both personal preference and what you have elsewhere in your build. But if you're playing Tornado Shot, Lightning Arrow, or maybe Val Venom Gyre, you should absolutely consider Kaom's Spirit and one of these 2 items. Next up, we have something that you might have seen if you paid close attention at League Start, or followed by Righteous Fire Journey. That is the 4th Vow, a new chess piece that was added in Crucible, which causes armor to apply to chaos damage taken from hits. By itself, this isn't all that impressive. Chaos damage is fairly infrequent, and while Chaos Weaver enemies can be scary if you're not capped, you don't really need all that damage to apply, right? Well, that's where the second part of this combo comes in. Glorious Vanity, sacrificed in the name of Xibaqua. This gives the Divine Flesh Keystone that causes 50% of all elemental damage to be taken as chaos damage. Which on Juggernaut makes the elemental mitigation from armor more effective, and means that 4th Vow applies to 50% of your elemental damage taken, plus all of your chaos. If you have pretty high armor, say around a cool 95,000, then this is a massive amount of defenses and solid all-round mitigation. Combine that with a couple other things like maybe Rational Doctrine, and you've got a pretty darn solid build. but it's particularly effective against pinnacle bosses since many of them penetrate resistances, making normal ways to defend against elemental damage far less effective than they should be. And be warned, this doesn't work for any build that's reliant on Energy Shield, as Divine Flesh causes all damage to Pierce ES. For anyone else though, this is a strong combo, and I hope it helps you round out your defenses. For more information, check out my min-maxed RF Jug or recent chest comparison videos. Now, you've probably heard of at least one of the first three things I talked about. They're all fairly common setups that are being used by a lot of players. This next one is a little bit more underground, and it's not so much about enabling a build so much as it is becoming a build. That is, the Ivory Tower, combined with Shaper's Touch, and a Coruscating Elixir. This can be used either in an Indigon mana stacking setup or an Energy Blade build, like you see here. It's used to get an absurd amount of ES and an absurd amount of ES recovery. So how does this work? First off, the Ivory Tower gives you Energy Shield based on your reserved life. So the more life you have, the more you can reserve, and the more Energy Shield you get. This is the first part of how this build gets a massive ES pool. The second part is the Shaper's Touch. 1% increased ES per 10 strength. By strength stacking, we get life, which becomes ES, which becomes better ES. And then the Coruscating Elixir means that chaos damage taken does not bypass Energy Shield, so you can freely reserve your mana and use that for more damage auras. Now, it should be noted that it also removes all but one life on use, so if you have any unreserved life, that will be regenerated as Energy Shield, but this is really much more about the first line than the second one. In many ways, this is truly the Exodia of builds, and if you get one thing wrong, it's all going to fall apart. For example, you need a Brutal Restraint over a Keystone in the denoted service of the Akara of Balbala. Which, as a note, that was the 5th try, and I finally got it right, so I'm keeping this take in. This combo is used to get massive life pools, more than enough damage, and an absurdly tanky build. If you want to know a little bit more about how this works, then ZM recently featured his Delve-compatible character that uses a very similar defensive setup. I'll link to his video down in the description. The idea of stat stacking is pretty darn cool, and it's especially unusual to see it used in this way, where it's almost indirect, because you're stat stacking to then get Energy Blade, which eventually becomes a cast on crit build. There's a few layers of abstraction here, and it ultimately gets the job done by making something really cool. If you're playing this on a Templar, then you also get a nice amount of crit from balancing out your strength and int. Stacking strength, remember, gives you life and ES. Stacking int gives you life and ES. So this is a very effective way to build a character. While it does require a lot of work, the end result is absolutely worth it. Especially since you get things like Wrathpith Glow, sacrificing 10% of your life when you use or trigger a spell, like with Cast on Crit, and you get, oh yeah, a massive amount of damage since you're stacking life anyway. Plus, since damage isn't bypassing your Energy Shield, there's no downside. Don't worry, the sacrificed life can't actually kill you, it'll just leave you at 1. And speaking of attribute stacking, let's round out with one more combo, this time purely about strength. You could say this is one of the strongest builds in Path of Exile, at least quite literally. The combo is the Iron Fortress and Red Blade Banner. But why does that matter? Well, if you're a strength stacker, using either Replica Alberon's Warpath or British Lead Sprinkler, then you have a ton of base damage. But you don't have any way to scale that. Increased damage is notoriously difficult to get. So you take the melee physical damage from strength and enhance it with Iron Fortress. Then you take the Keystone, Iron Will. The damage bonus applies to all spell damage as well. Use Red Blade Banner to give Warcry cooldown recovery rate and infinite power. Then combine all of this with the Battle Mage's Cry. Battle Mage's Cry applies spell damage to attack damage at 150% of a value. So now all the increased damage from your strength, which would be going to waste because you're not doing melee fizz damage, is now being applied at 150% of a value to all of your attacks. This way, strength scales, well, your base damage, your increased damage, and via your helmet, even your crit chance. Strength truly is a one-stop shop here. Oh, it also gives accuracy, which if you have a Jug Ascendancy for attack speed, is even more attack speed, or it can just help you cap out your hit chance. This combo's great because it really does give everything that you need offensively, though unfortunately it's pretty strict on the gear slots. Your chest, your boots, your shield, and your helmet are all going to be tied up. For a little bit more information on that, I made a video talking about the strength stacking combo way back in Scourge League. There have been a few changes to the glove slot, but all the rest, it's exactly the same items that I used back then. So if you want to know more, then be sure to check out that video after this one. So those are just a few of the meta-unique synergies that are thriving in Crucible. Personally, I find unique synergies to be really cool and also super fascinating. If you're considering a new build, or you're just wondering how to get a little bit better on your current one, maybe think of a way you can work one of these synergistic combos into your current or future characters. But now I'm curious, what's your favorite unique combo for damage or defenses? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below, and maybe leave a like while you're down there. Before I go, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. If you're looking for something else to watch, maybe watch one of the dedicated videos that I mentioned on some of these unique synergies. Either the strength stacker that I've gone over in the past, the Bloodnotch combo that I just talked about, my RF Jug videos, or ZenM's video talking about his Deep Delver build. Links to all of those will be up in the card and down in the description, or you can always go for a recommendation that's on screen right now. Thanks for watching, remember to look out for the weekly meta report over on Maxroll, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.